Here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. Starting again, my name is Kody Kinzie. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and I am also apparently getting kicked offline occasionally. So sorry for the delay in the stream, dealing with the aftermath of a power outage. A lot of stuff is still booting up and obviously acting a little bit weird, but good to be here. I am going to be answering your ethical hacking questions as well as talking about some cool projects I've been working on. And first among them is, oh, is there no sound? Well, let me double check that. Okay, there we go. All right, cool. It seems like things are working now. All right, so first off, I wanted to talk about my journey to getting my 3D printer up and running again. So I'm gonna share the alternative that I was considering before an intensive surgery in which I managed to fix my original like Mark III Prusa. But these Bamboo Lab printers have been popping up all over the place. And I'm starting to get really interested in them. They have a variety of different features, like the ability to do like AI analysis on like prints to determine whether or not they failed, if they've turned into spaghetti. And some of the things I saw in this review were really appealing to me. Now, the craziest thing I think about it is that it's able to print it. Well, for one, it's got this LiDAR sensor that's able to see all the various like possible defects or raised portions of a print and kind of either adjust to that or give you warnings, which I think is really cool. Obviously, the printer I work with currently doesn't have any knowledge of that. I thought it was fancy. It does auto leveling, but this really takes it to the next level. And this filament changing kit is pretty crazy. It basically allows you to print things that are complicated in multiple colors, which I have never done before. And there's kind of two schools of thought to this. One of them is, let's say you want to do a print that has like 4 different colors. Okay, cool. You can either have all of these spools, which can be kind of changed out as cartridges, or you just have like 5 printer heads. So here's an example of a multicolored print where there's 3 different colors here, maybe 4 different colors here. But either way, we've got multiple colors. And in order to do this properly, we actually have to change out the colors multiple times, sometimes on each layer. So this is kind of crazy. If we have multiple print heads, then obviously we can just keep swapping out to different colors. It's no big deal. And the Prusa XL does that, but it also costs like almost $4,000. So for significantly less, one of these Bamboo printers can still do multiple colors, but there is a cost here. So here's the final result. This is pretty cool. I haven't really seen this ability, and I was only using the Prusa that I had to manually swap things out to get like layer on layer color changes and be able to do some QR code research sort of things. But this is kind of a new level. But look at the effect here. In order to use the system that the Bamboo uses, it basically has to purge the nozzle every time it wants to switch colors. So if you're switching colors multiple times on a single layer, then it means you end up creating almost as much waste as you do actual print. So that's obviously a problem. Like if you want to make sure that you're not wasting a bunch of filament, then this actually might not be the best system. So over time, I imagine maybe you would make the money back on like a really, 3D printer that costs as much as a Honda. But if anybody in the chat has one of these 2 printers, either the Prusa XL or this new Bamboo printer, I know there's a more economic version of this one. This is the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon, but I know that there's one that's a little bit less expensive. It has a lot of the same technology. So if you work with a Bamboo printer, if you have worked with one versus a Prusa, I'm really interested in hearing opinions because it's quite a lot. And I'm definitely going to be sharing all the interesting potential of a finely calibrated 3D printer on the show. Of course, there's all sorts of cool things you can print with this. And with the availability of LiDAR scanners built into some iPhones now, I'm kind of excited to see what I can do making some 3D models. So seems like, all right, seems like the stream is moving again. I'm pleased that we're through the production stuff. So I also want to talk about, now that my 3D printer is up and running, I've been working on a couple of prototypes, this being one of them. So it might look a little strange, but this is like a mount for a Meshtastic node with a huge directional antenna on it. And I needed to use a lot of hot glue, both to seal the top and also provide some structural support from this antenna that is actually too big to be stuck on here. So this was my first print, I think, when I got my 3D printer back up and running. And I want to show off what it looks like. So over here on Thingiverse is the 3D print file. And it looks a little strange, but let me go over to my screen. And it looks a little bit strange, but what's nice about this is you can put in a Heltec V3, which is one of the most popular. Here's an example of one, which is one of the most popular mesh tastic boards. And you can basically encase it in this body that perfectly fits into a PVC pipe, seals up pretty well, and allows you to hoist it up really, really high while not exposing it to the elements. I thought this was pretty clever, and especially at higher densities, I thought this was a project worth trying out. So again, I decided to put on an even higher gain antenna, but you can kind of see this has a number of cool features. What I liked about this and why I would consider it if you are wanting to stick up a mesh tastic node is, as well as holding the board in here with a little rail to prevent it from moving, it's got great room for an antenna. It also has an anti-pull mechanism. So there's a little plug here that comes up and rotates around the USB port. And what it does is provide support so that if it accidentally gets tugged on, it won't unplug the cable. If there's just some thermal expansion or if like something yoinks on it a little bit, like it should keep it pretty firmly in place until you rotate this back out so it can clear the little slot that's available for it. So I thought this was a super clever design. It prints with a couple of these USB cable retainers, and then you can also print a version of it that doesn't have a top. So that might seem counterintuitive. Like it basically breaks the point of this, which is to have a little secure place to put this where the elements can't get in. But I figure with enough sealant in the top here, you can still have an antenna come out, like a directional antenna. And that's exactly what I've done here. So my little gadget, I guess, of the week is a directional 4 dBi boosted mesh tastic node that's designed to be out in the elements. It's designed to, maybe get blown around a little bit or like have not very much maintenance on it for quite some time. And we'll see if this thing can provide a good amount of signal coverage while being elevated really, really high up and sealed as best as I can with hot glue against the elements. It's going to be really cold this winter. It got down to -40 something last winter. So we'll see if this can survive. But yeah, I'm not planning on doing any temperature measurement with this. This is more going to be like a router or relay node. So for mesh tastic, in like an area where I want to hoist this up really high and have it just be able to survive the elements without any ingress, I think this should be pretty good. And the bottom is also segmented, so it can be kind of zip tied against a PVC pipe and provide a pretty good seal. So I think this is a cool design. I'm going to be testing it. I think it's interesting. But now that I have a 3D printer working again, I'm pretty excited, even if there are a little defects in the way that it's printing. I think we'll see whether or not it's worth buying an entirely new printer. So of course, I also do read the comments, and I wanted to go through a couple of them in a more structured segment. Sometimes I will read these ahead of time and try to answer them, but let's go through and take a look at some of the comments I got on the YouTube channel. Most of them are pretty great. Some of them are funny and some of them are weird, per usual. So of course, we have somebody voting for binary as the best beginner language. If you are a computer, then binary is definitely the best language to get started on. I also had somebody recommending Vault Warden in a self-hosted version if I wanted to replace my 1Password. Sounds reasonable. Someone also doesn't like that I did a reaction video to Mr. Robot rather than watching the entire series first. And then there was a question about how Wi-Fi is used to track your location. So I was talking about AGPS or assisted GPS. And the question was, it only checks for Wi-Fi names or not MAC addresses if the devices for the devices / routers nearby. Seems like a flaw in their system. So the question here was whether or not assisted GPS uses Wi-Fi network names or also their MAC addresses. And in most cases, it's both. Originally, it might have started out as one or the other, but both provide rich pieces of information. And generally, if your phone is able to receive something like a MAC address in a packet that might not be a broadcast packet, maybe it's some other sort of packet, but it recognizes that MAC address and knows generally where that device is, then it probably will still process that and give you a geolocation. Now, I will say that most of the time it's relying on beacon frames. Like that's what these are kind of looking for, is they're sniffing down beacon frames and they're attempting to find where you are by what Wi-Fi networks are around you. And Wi-Fi networks advertise their presence with beacon frames. Oops. So it makes sense that beacon frames, which both include the MAC address and the Wi-Fi network name, would be what they're basically forwarding on to these services to find out where you are. But that's actually a pretty good question, because you would be able to spoof it more easily. In this case, you need to spoof both of them in order for it to successfully fool assisted GPS. Okay, I have an invitation to join the cybercrime gang, it looks like, which I am just not going to respond to. I'm going to respectfully move on. And then, yes, another person is remarking, so my phone is telling on me. Yeah, in most cases, even if you turn off Wi-Fi, it means that your phone is still using assisted GPS to find where you are. And that means it's sending out packets, it's receiving packets. The Wi-Fi radio is still quite active. And then Yawnbox. This is, by the way, I'm glad you watched the show, and I'm going to reach out to you on Mastodon. I did see your comments, so thank you for that. But companies like Cisco and Comcast are also global passive adversaries. They can track all the wireless MAC addresses that ever pass through them or by them. We convinced the city of Seattle's CTO to write contracts with Cisco not to do this, and also to limit data kept by the city when they bought Cisco gear for the Seattle Public Libraries. Data is undoubtedly sent to the NSA. So the idea here is that if you have wireless access points that are listening in on all these devices that are walking around attached to people, like phones, laptops, all this stuff, then you can do a number of different things to unmask those devices. Oh, sorry. You can do a number of things to unmask those devices and start to establish like patterns of life. And that's where, being able to track you as you go about your day and create a historical record of everywhere you've been, maybe people you spent time with or traveled with, like that is really an invasion of privacy. People don't think that their devices are going to be tattling on them in a way that can be collected by, an entity like Cisco and then basically bought and sold if they're not explicitly told to not do so. So in the United States, I've mentioned this many times, we have very few data regulations. And if the city of whatever decides that they want to start, collecting information from vendors that have hardware, in their area, and they want to pay for this, then there's very little we can do to prevent that information from being processed in ways that we might not agree with and being forwarded on to entities that we also might not agree with, like certain 3-letter agencies. This is saying that perhaps if we want to get away from tracking, we should just move to the Amazon, but then conceding that they have infrared satellite cameras, so they would probably just find us anyway. Oh, that's interesting. So James is mentioning that assisted GPS is starting to use stationary Bluetooth beacons now for tunnels. So basically, if there's no other way of doing it, then that's why this is exactly why you get that geolocation warning. Like if you've ever tried, like my roommate bought a thermometer, and in order to use it, he had to enable location settings or services on his phone because the phone interpreted an attempt to connect to a Bluetooth device as an attempt to geolocate itself. That's because people are using Bluetooth beacons to basically do that, and they'll make it so they can try to find any device that comes in range of that beacon or respond to it. So it's really interesting to see how this cat and mouse game has evolved between app developers and people with Bluetooth beacons that are willing to basically have that information, provide a map for them as to where this device is, and then sell that location data. It's really a lot. All right. So this was my favorite part of the exchange. They'll still find you. It all depends on who's looking for you, even if you are in the middle of the ocean. And then this is probably the best comment of the week. Then explain all the unfound people. That is a heavy burden. I don't know how I would win that argument. I'm out. But yeah, I can't explain all the unfound people, but I do believe that depending who is looking for you, it is very difficult to not be found. So I agree with this thought. I am not a huge fan of Clearview AI. I think that scraping everyone's faces from social media accounts without the permission of the companies hosting the data, and also without the permission of the people included in the data set, is a huge invasion of privacy. And making a law enforcement tool with a lot of false positives that is trained off of that is one of the first examples of having your data scraped, stolen, and turned into a commercial product that is then highly sought after by law enforcement looking to get around warrants. So I am always glad to see when they get in trouble, because again, I don't think it's particularly ethical to use that data without people's consent to potentially include them in criminal and investigations. Like, it doesn't seem like something we should bother people with, that they are not actually involved. So this thought is, they have no right to put people's faces in this database without their consent. I hope everyone who has their face inside the database is able to pursue it in court. Yeah, I agree. I wish that there were laws that would allow you to do things like this and make sure that if your data is being used for a profit, you're able to either get a share of that profit or opt out. I feel like it's got to be one or the other. So we will see whether or not that actually happens in the United States. But in Europe, for example, there are more data protections. And that is actually where Clearview was getting in trouble. So that's why. All right, so this is something I deeply agree with. The comment says, it would be helpful if we could determine how Burp Suite detects live demos and knows to create the demo fails. I am amazed how many times I have practiced over and over and over before the stream, and then without fail, I will not be able to access the lab as soon as I start presenting it. It happened last week, so if you want to see me, I'm so used to demo fail now that it doesn't really even frazzle me that much. I don't think it's even funny to watch me like freak out and react to it anymore, because like I just, I just expect it. But yes, we had a demo fail last time where I had to completely restart the lab all over again, but we still got through it, and it was actually pretty fun. We covered a number of different cloud topics, and I'm going to be continuing to do that on Friday. So if you like some of these Burp Suite labs where we're covering cloud security topics, it's something that is combining my emerging knowledge of AWS and the shared responsibility model with tools that people use every day, like Burp Suite. So check it out in the previous live streams on Friday. I think you'll enjoy them, and we're going to do cutouts on those pretty soon. All right, I want to talk about my journey through PCB design. This has been going on for a while. In order to tamp down your expectations, I want to just immediately show off the result of what I've been working on. So this is my board. It's got my art on it, right? And it's got no electronics so far, but that's okay. My schematic is done and I just got to place stuff. It's not a big deal. Instead, it took me a good amount of time to figure out how to put art on a circuit board. So in this case, it's very simple art. And I have created a whole world of pain for myself in other layers that I'll be adding on top of this. However, this is what I got done over the last week or so, and it's still enough that I want to show off exactly how I got here. So let's say that you want to put art on a circuit board. Maybe you don't even want to put electronics. Maybe this is just like a name badge or something. There's a lot of tutorials out there, and I last week was trying to use Easy EDA, but I found that almost all the tutorials involving art were using KiCad. So I decided to take a stab at using KiCad instead. Again, I'm making like 50 of these maybe, so I'm not really too worried about getting them done by Hackaday SuperCon. I would love to, I'm trying to, but and I'm pushing myself to, but I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't do it. So in this case, I have added a silkscreen layer that allows me to specify where I do and don't want things. I can hide it and then show it off again. Where is it? Here. And you can see that this is adding some art to the circuit board. And it's not, it's not very standard. Like it's not like a regular footprint I would find in a library. This is something I created. So how did I do this? And how would you do this if you wanted to create something? Well, there's lots of tutorials on just getting the, footprint set up and creating the outline for your circuit board. In this case, I created a new circuit board and then I just made a rectangle. And that rectangle, I just picked an arbitrary size. But I made sure to keep that size so that I could resize all the images I wanted to put on top of it to the same size. But aside from that, I haven't done anything special. I've opened KiCad, I've made a new board, but there was a process involved to take an image and then get it on here as a piece of art that can be manufactured. So first, I just want to recommend if you are using KiCad, it's very overwhelming. It reminds me of when I was in Wireshark for the first time, in that there are all these buttons that I don't know what they do, and I don't know if I'll ever know what they do. Okay, sorry about that. It seems like my internet keeps going out today. So in this long list of tools that I am not sure if I'll ever use, we have the image converter. And this is what makes KiCad 8 pretty nice, is the ability to take bitmap files and just convert them into a PCB footprint, because that's what we have to work with when we're using KiCad. Ew, KiCad. Okay, tell me what else to use. I'm assuming based on the ew that you are an Eagle user, but if my assumption is wrong, then please let me know. So in KiCad, I can go to the image converter, and I think I might already have it open. Of course, it's in the wrong window. Oh, here we go. So here is the image converter, and this allows me to open up various bitmap files and convert them. And in this case, I have a size picked out that I want, 35 by 56 millimeters. And I can dial this up and down in order to get different levels of black versus white. And in this case, that just kind of affects like the width or the thickness of these lines. But this is my copper layer, and I'm if I want, and I can see the original version is here, very much the same as this black and white version, because I'm using just very, very basic shapes and stuff here in order to make this not too difficult. So if I want to take a shape like this and I want to export it so that I can use it in KiCad, then again, it's not too hard. So just, again, this is my copper layer. If I want to do that, then I can select the PCB layer that I want to add. It doesn't have a copper layer, but I can do the solder mask or the silk screen. I just have to go in and change a couple things in the text. Apparently, it continues to say, but I still haven't done this properly, I think, for my copper layer. Doesn't matter. But anyway, I'm gonna do the solder mask, and I can do export to file, and then I also should select footprint here. I originally was doing symbol, and then nothing was working. So very important to select footprint. But as soon as I export that to a file, I can save it as whatever. I've got this tutorial that I'm following as the file name, and then I can go into KiCad and I can actually add this as something. Oh, wait, that's a 3D viewer. That's not what I want. I can go into KiCad and I can add this as a layer. So there's all these different layers that are defined here that are describing like the front copper side, the back copper side, the front solder mask, the back solder mask. And that's basically to give me an indication, as these are all stacked on top of each other, like where it's going to be visible. So if I want to do something on the silk screen, if I want to add like a pattern here, which is what I want to do, then I would select the layer that I want to add it to, and then I can do this add footprint. So originally I had to also add the folder that the library is in. So if I go to preferences and then manage footprint libraries, this is where I actually had to set it. I can select right here to add the folder where I saved that library, the image that I converted. And once that's added, it was recommended to me to like name this, like put like a 1 in front of it, because there's so many like default ones that it's really hard to find this actually once you save it, and then you have to go through them. So if you change the nickname to have like a 1 or something to show up at the top of the list, kind of a smart idea for the library you want to work with on that project, which is going to have the footprint that has, you know, all the different cool art you want to put on it. So once that's added, then I can go to add footprint. It'll have the various layers here. And you can see for me, I have the copper silkscreen layer. And once I click OK, it'll give me this movable version. And the important thing is just for me to line it up somewhere where I can kind of stack them all on top of each other, and I can zoom in as much as I need in order to make that happen. So once I then press enter, then it should be added onto the silkscreen layer. And if I want to confirm that that's been done properly, then I can visualize it with this 3D viewer. And that's how I got this great view. And if I wanted to add one to like the back, for example, it's still pretty simple, right? Like I would just go to the back silkscreen layer, and then I would do this. And hopefully that added it to the back silkscreen layer, but I can remove a layer also. Okay, it looks like maybe it didn't. I can remove a layer there to examine it. So let's see if I can do that. I want it to work. No? Okay, all right. Well, anyway, we have reached the limits of my knowledge from which I will continue to work. But that is generally how the process works for adding art to your board. Again, this is just for like a single layer. There's lots of other things you can do. There's things you can do that also involve like the copper mask and like having like whether or not you have like the silk screen layer or the solder mask layer over copper creates like a different look and feel too. There's a lot of different things you can do to create multiple tones. And I think that that's a really interesting way of using some of these more traditional art methods. Although you can also just, I'm not going to say cheat, but you can also just use some of the new processes that allow you to just put an image on top of the circuit board at the last moment. So if you already have like an outline and you're basically wrapping it like a car, is kind of how I think of it, then you could just like plop that multi-color image down. And I believe it's JLC PCB that now has a process for being able to print in color. So that's where I'm at with this PCB design. If you're curious about getting started with PCB design, then I am doing it alongside. So I'll continue to go over that as well as the cloud security stuff every week as we continue to do this. So, all right. So here's a question, and yes, I can answer it now because I am currently doing the stream where I'm doing Q&A. But there was a question actually on the YouTube channel about hitting like a dead API, and that's one thing that might be related. So over on the screen, I have this. What if the API that you're trying to examine is dead? So there's a single player online Android game, but the server are dead. What approach should I take? That's a lot harder. Like if you're trying to examine an API that's no longer responding, most of the investigation techniques you would be able to utilize that allow you to examine the feedback and learn more about it clearly wouldn't work. Like the server is like not spun up anymore. However, that's where if you had like a client instance of the game and you were in like intercepting requests it was making, that's how you would take, for example, this is how like malware is like reverse engineered, right? Like they'll have a sample that's making certain specific calls out to an API, and then someone will like spin up a little server that then responds to those API calls or fuzzes them and tries to figure out how it works. So that's really what you would need to do. It's quite a lot more difficult than, you know, if the server is alive and you can just man in the middle and kind of examine it. But what we're talking about here is Postman, which is a tool that allows you to intercept communications between a server and a client and kind of reverse engineer how an API works. You can still do that from just one side, right? You can just intercept requests out from the client that it, like every time you try to do something, see exactly like how it's formatting that request and maybe be able to reverse engineer how that server worked. But it is a little difficult to do that. And by a little bit, I mean like it takes a lot of work and a lot of like fuzzing and just figuring out what the server's response would have been or could have been. All of that is much more difficult and akin to like fully reverse engineering like a piece of malware, a server and a client. All right, so let's see. What other questions do we have? 3-letter agencies make me want to say 4-letter words. All right, so going up through the questions, what are my cyber qualifications? That strongly depends. So I don't have any certs. Like, you know, if you're talking about any of the ones that you would like pay for, study for, and get in order to show off like technical achievements in cybersecurity, like I've never needed certifications because I came in through a different path, right? I started as a writer and then I started doing things in college. So by the time that I was in school and already learning these things, I didn't really have a need. We're back. Cool. Sorry about that. Seems like we're going to be constantly interrupted today, so we'll see whether or not we can get through it. So yeah, anyway, the question was whether or not I have any cyber qualifications. I think that they were talking about certifications specifically, but I don't have any. They've not been useful to my career because I again, got in through media and then went to school for this directly and got a job relatively quickly in the field that I wanted to be in. So certifications were always kind of a stretch goal and not something that was particularly helpful for me in my career path. Yes, and in response to the Meshtastic node here, it does look like a vacuum cleaner attachment. I thought of several other things as well, but I think that might actually be the most accurate. The vacuum cleaner attachment this would probably do a pretty good job of being a vacuum cleaner attachment. All right, going through some of the other questions. And not so much a question, just exciting, but I have a case and a solar panel for mine waiting on the battery I wanted. Yeah, I've seen some pretty crazy designs for putting out these Meshtastic nodes that involve like nickel cadmium batteries or other things that don't require battery management. I haven't really looked into this, but some of the designs I've seen on Thingiverse are pretty cool. And the fact that they're able to emit components with a particular type of battery, like I actually have some of those for an unrelated project. So I might give it a try and see whether or not that's something I could do. Although typically I include some level of battery management. So if you can use nickel cadmium batteries for just directly connecting them to a solar panel, then that would be pretty nice. Let's see. All right. Oh, and sorry to see you leave. However, I did answer your question. And if you, Alex, if you do have the question about APIs, feel free to ask it. All right. So I'm going to see if there were, oh yeah. And then somebody was also asking if there was a link to join the Discord server. Yeah, there is. I post this occasionally. I will make sure to post it in the chat right now. But yes, if you want to join the Discord server, I did find that there was some great news that was posted here. I was reading about how Chinese researchers had broken RSA encryption with the quantum computer. And I would not have found out about the story if it wasn't for our Discord server. So if you want to send me some news to cover on the Friday stream, or if you just see something crazy and you want to discuss it, then check out that Discord link and I would be excited to discuss it. All right. Okay, so here's an interesting perspective. So this was on my mapping Meshtastic nodes worldwide. Very scary. I thought watching this that I could set up these in my area. Now, no way. Yeah, so a lot of people were kind of actually spooked by this, and there were some other comments. So basically, you found a potential flaw in the node network that could allow outsiders to trace and locate you. Scary. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit about this, because I mean that is one interpretation. So the video in question here is mapping Meshtastic nodes worldwide. And we found a service that was using nodes that are forwarding on the packets they get to a central server to geolocate nodes that are geolocating themselves, right? So in this case, you've turned on GPS on your Meshtastic node and you're allowing it to geolocate you. And you're thinking, who could be listening? Who would be stringing together this data? Well, if you are turning on GPS on your Meshtastic node, then you are actually creating footprints that somebody could use. And in my case, I was able to trace the actual flight, the elevation, everything else, and I could very easily have matched that up with any other flight data in order to identify the specific flight. It was very clear where I had been. You could see like a bit by bit progression of all these different places I'd been with this Meshtastic node as the packets it were sending out were being received and interpreted by this database. So some people were interpreting that as, if I get a Meshtastic node, then this is going to geolocate me. So far, it seems as though the only nodes that are included in this are ones that choose to identify themselves. So if they do not have GPS enabled, then this should not be able to add you to this database of Meshtastic nodes. It shouldn't be able to geolocate you. So I just wanted to be clear about that. But a lot of people do turn this on, or do maybe accidentally tick the enable GPS on their device. And if you're at home, then that means your device will permanently be set to your home location until you turn off the sharing on the location. So Meshtastic is surprisingly permissive when it comes to location sharing. I myself sometimes forget the way that it works. So if you are worried about leaking your location with Meshtastic, then this is an interesting development. It means that if somebody in your area is forwarding packets onto one of these databases that's making a map of Meshtastic nodes, then that node will be geolocated, and that might not be something that people want. So very interesting thoughts here. When I was making this video, I was kind of shocked by how granular it was about my location, about the temperature, about the altitude, about the speed I was traveling at. There's really a lot of information that it was broadcasting. So for tracking a device or for tracking a person, Meshtastic seems to be disproportionately effective if you're able to have a network of nodes that are forwarding on packets about nodes of interest. And I know that there's also some interesting security vulnerabilities around intercepting Meshtastic traffic and then scraping it, or otherwise looking into private messages between people. Until very recently, Meshtastic did not actually encrypt messages between users. So if you were to direct message another node, then any node that it passed through would be able to read the full contents of the message and who it was going to. So that means that, it's not exactly as private as people might think. You do need to implement some security in order to make sure that messages that are being passed between users are not plain text. And nowadays, it seems as though some updates have come out that allow you to have a public-private key relationship with other nodes, allowing you to authenticate and also keep secrets. So that's very cool. So it seems like Meshtastic is advancing in some ways that are initially some of those flaws were like, I was like, okay, well, maybe that's why the government's fine with Meshtastic, right? If they can just pop up a couple helpful nodes, like invisible like router nodes that aren't showing up on the network, but are processing packets and are like, intercepting them and looking into conversations and making sure nothing sketching is going on, then maybe the ability to rummage through people's DMs is what keeps Meshtastic as a legal loophole maybe working. So I'm not totally sure how the implementation of stronger security is going to affect that, but it is something that I've been experimenting with myself as the latest versions of Meshtastic have come out and included more encryption functionality. So a lot of really cool and exciting things there coming out. But yeah, definitely a little disconcerting to know that accidentally leaving on the GPS location could theoretically end up on this big map and help people identify where you are, where you're going, or if you're moving around, what flight you're on. Let's see. Any other questions in the chat? Let's see. Yeah, so James points out that Meshtastic does have a setting where you can set like how precise you want to be with your location. So just the same way that your Android device will ask you, like, do you want to share your precise or like coarse location with an app? Do you want it to be within a mile, 2 miles? You can set like a fuzziness that will select a location that's appropriate for people doing signal testing. So it'll still give them a general idea where the device is, but it won't give them the exact location. And that is desirable if you have a node you don't want people messing with. Maybe it's a public node or something, but you do want to give other people the ability to do range tests off of it and figure out like, how roughly how far away they are when they're communicating with your node. So it's kind of a politeness thing. If you want to do other people that service, then you can. I know that a lot of people would rather just, make their node not give away that information at all. But again, like a node that's not giving away its information will not, GPS location, that is, will not show up on things like one of these geolocated maps of nodes worldwide. So if you have concerns about your privacy and you don't want it showing up, then yeah, just make sure that your settings always have disabled GPS on from the start, and never turn on your GPS in a place where you would be, never turn on the GPS settings of your Meshtastic node while it's connected to your phone in a place you wouldn't want to share, because your phone will share its current GPS location, and that will make it so that your Meshtastic node is always calling that out as its current location until you turn it off. So little mistakes I've made. Perhaps you should not make the same mistake. All right, so I think that is most of the questions from the YouTube channel. I do read them. I just wanted to point out, and a lot of the time I weave them into the questions that I'm going to be answering throughout the stream. But if you got a question that I didn't answer, of course, I'm also taking them live. All right, so we covered some beginner PCB design. That was surprisingly fun to learn. We also covered some of the YouTube channel. Oh, and then I also wanted to cover, since we were already talking about Meshtastic, this is going to be the next design that I'm working on that I think is really cool. So with the same piece of hardware, there were all these different cases for the Heltec V3, and this is one I thought was kind of handy. So I've already got a couple different nodes that I have set up to be mobile that like stick onto the windshield or otherwise are like designed for a car. And that's pretty cool because it means that as you're traveling around, you can receive messages and do range tests and stuff like that. In particular, I want to do some range tests for devices I'm setting up in my backyard. So sticking it on or rather getting the antenna to be like clear of the car and like with a good line of sight was surprisingly difficult and involved a lot of painter's tape in the past. So now there is this very cool 3D printed design that allows you to have both power coming in and a antenna coming out. And the fact that I can put an even larger antenna on this kind of is one of the things that attracts me. What was even more interesting is this totally unrelated car top solar node that is not included or referenced in this design, but I'm actually much more interested in. So, I was kind of anticipating this would be a temporary design that has a cable or something plugged in. That's kind of what this one shows. And I haven't printed this one yet, but it looks like, again, like you've got like a strong magnet or something on the bottom, just kind of keeping it secured in place. I'm really excited to try this. I think it might be one of my favorite like experimental like drive-by like communication nodes, or if I want to have like a bunch of cars in a convoy all being able to communicate with each other while you're driving in an area that doesn't have cellular service. My friends sometimes will do this, like we'll go out somewhere like in the backways and we'll find like a ghost town or something where there's just no cell service. And while we're driving, we'll want to communicate. So this or something like it might end up being the solution. But I'm definitely interested in the long-term potential of a system like this, just maybe not in the attention that having this on top of my car might bring. Maybe there's a subtle way of doing it. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, but it certainly seems like this might attract some attention, as it certainly looks it looks a lot more suspicious than this original design does. All right. Also, hello, Rodrigo. Good to see everyone on the stream today. So those are most of the projects I've been working on. I'm still getting ready to go to Hackaday SuperCon, and I'm also excited to do another one of the cloud security demos. We are still cutting them out, but they came out pretty good. I have to say, even though we had some demo fail, I'm considering making another vulnerable version of some of the labs that I've done now on the stream, so people can try it out on their own hardware and they don't have to rely on PortSwigger's excellent but sometimes slightly fickle labs. I do really like that they're able to create a virtual machine that anybody can access, and you can do it just directly. Like, you just log into your account and it should just work. So not having to set up hardware is definitely a benefit when it works. But having it fail a couple of times on the stream is enough for me to maybe try making a version that you can try running at home that's not connected or online like I've done in the past. So if that's something you want, please let me know in the comments, and it's something I will probably be working on. So the next stream that I am doing, I think will be possibly, anyway, hosted at SupplyFrame, as I'm helping out doing some soldering for Hackaday SuperCon. So it's going to be the second year that I volunteer to do some soldering. And if you are in the Los Angeles area and you have even an interest in soldering, we're definitely looking for people who are available to help out soldering at the conference. So there's been some talk of getting free conference tickets if you're available to help them solder their badges. Last year, it was surprisingly easy, and the badges were really delightful and fun. I made, I think, like 60 badges and soldered the screens together. So it was pretty satisfying to know that lots of people who had their badges, I had touched them, I'd improved them, I'd taken a step in manufacturing them. And definitely SupplyFrame needs help every year. So if you're interested, you can contact SupplyFrame. I know our contact Magenta there is looking for people who are able to solder over the next couple of days, all the way up to SuperCon. So if you're interested, you can reach out to SupplyFrame. I've referred most of my friends already, and I know that they still need help. So SupplyFrame is where Hackaday SuperCon is going to be hosted. It is an awesome place with lots of really cool things. And they also, I think they buy lunch. So definitely, if you're in the SoCal area and you're able to help out, then it's worth it, because you get to attend SuperCon for free. There's lots of cool makers there. The badge itself is beautiful and cool and interesting every single year. And it's also just great to help out the community and be a part of something like SuperCon. All right, so that's just about everything I had for this week. I'm going to be in Los Angeles, probably hanging out at Null Space Labs and doing some other stuff there over the next couple of weeks. You'll definitely see me at Hackaday SuperCon. So if you're going to be there, I will be there as well. And yeah, I usually host like a little mixer or something at Null Space Labs during SuperCon to invite people from out of town to check out the local hackerspace in Los Angeles. So if you're around and you want to check it out, I will probably be hosting something there too. So just stay tuned for details on that. But it's always some fun to have people from the conference over to hang out. All right, everyone. I think that's just, oh yeah, and James says, I love how people are always helping solder projects for others. Yeah, SuperCon is crazy. There's always tons of soldering going on. There's lots of people just creating things in that back alley. I love going back there, and I always end up spending a good amount of money on cool projects I see people sharing. And I also get my best ideas for hardware of the year. So every time I go to SuperCon, I find that I encounter a new material or new type of lighting or something that I can use in my own projects. And this year I know that for whatever ridiculous Halloween costume I end up coming up with, I'm probably going to be using some of the really cool LEDs that I discovered at last year's SuperCon. Oh yeah, and I didn't even talk about this. So we are about to hit 60K subscribers on the channel. So Security Forward has been, growing for a long time. We started this channel when I very first got started at Varonis. Originally, we were making more null byte style content, which was hiking to the top of a mountain and doing an experiment and all this cool stuff. And then the pandemic hit. We shifted a lot to online content, and we've really been doing the stream for quite some time now. So the fact that we are at 59,000 subscribers, it's going to happen this month. We're going to hit 60K. So I just wanted to thank all of you for making this a thing, being able to hang out with people who are interested in the same things, being able to communicate with the community directly, and also having Varonis sponsor us has been incredible. I've been able to do lots of the things I've wanted to do, but not had the time to. And I've also got to meet a lot of you at conferences and workshops I've done worldwide. So thank you very much to everybody who's come to the workshops, who's been on the live streams, James especially, and who's been on the Discord server. All of you have helped make this into really what it was meant to be, hacking with friends. So if you run into me at Pasadena, I'll have hopefully plenty of hacking with friends and security forward stickers to give away. So hopefully I see some of you there. And yeah, thank you again to everyone who got us to 60K, which today, tomorrow, when is it going to happen? Probably very soon. We've only got a couple hundred people left to go until we're there. So just wanted to celebrate that and shout out that 60K is a big deal. Like it means that what we're doing is valuable to people, and the people I've spoken to at conferences seem to really enjoy the show. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, feels really good. All right, so that's all we've got for this week. You can tune in again on Friday, and we'll be doing another cloud security lab, as well as maybe checking out supply frame. I've got a much smaller and more appropriate for the task camera than I did last year, so I might even be able to give a little, with permission anyway, a little tour of the studio. So I'm looking forward to being back in California to working on some of the badges for SuperCon, and yeah, it's gonna be really cool. So I will see everybody on Friday for the Hacker News, where we're going to be talking about China, being able to break RSA with a quantum computer, as well as other hacking news. I actually sent in some news to Bleeping Computer this week, and I'm really excited to see if it gets published. I've contributed to a handful of stories on Bleeping Computer. They're one of my favorite people to turn around and be like, look at this crazy stuff going on. And then see whether or not it actually gets published. So we'll see. We'll see whether or not it actually sees the light of day, but I will be excited to read out a story that I contribute to if it happens. So if you want to support the stream, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. Let everybody at Varonis know that you appreciate the stream and you want to keep it going, and it doesn't cost you anything to let them know that. All right, we will see you on Friday. Have a good week, everyone. And thanks for sticking with us through the technical difficulties. 2 interruptions, 3 interruptions, not too bad. I've had streams that were a lot worse, so hopefully things improve over here after the big windstorm and the power outage that we just had. All right, everyone. See you on Friday, and have a good one. Goodbye.